Hello, everyone, and welcome. Let's break down this analysis today. We're looking at a truly fascinating sociological shift in Sri Lanka's political landscape. We're going to examine how grassroots political awareness has completely transformed. We are talking about a major move from deep-rooted, identity-based loyalty to something surprisingly analytical. It's a shift that gives us a huge window into the country's future, and we've got some incredibly interesting ground to cover in the source material today.
Okay, let's dive into this. The core focus of today's analysis is a very specific demographic of grassroots voters, a group known colloquially in Sri Lankan political circles as Bayyas. Now, historically, this group was seen as having a pretty rigid way of viewing leadership. But the source material points out a massive and honestly really positive evolution in their mindset. We're literally watching a demographic transition from relying on superficial loyalties to adopting a really sharp, data-driven approach to governance. But to really grasp how huge this shift is, we first have to understand exactly where they started.
Part 1. The past. Superficial arguments. Personality over policy.
The author lays out 4 historical examples that absolutely hit the nail on the head regarding this past mindset. Number 1, the belief that because former President Mahinda Rajapaksa ended the war, he just had to rule forever. Number 2, this general tolerance for corruption. The idea was, hey, stealing from the state is fine, just as long as tangible development like infrastructure is happening. Number 3, thinking that executing urban projects like building pavements under Gotabaya Rajapaksa was a totally sufficient qualification for the presidency itself. And finally, number 4, an unwavering blind faith in policies like the sudden shift to organic farming without any real critical evaluation of how that actually works. The defining characteristic here? It was conflating completely different skill sets. It's like assuming the guy who successfully ended a military conflict is automatically a wizard at managing a complex national economy.
And back then, the political dialogue was super restricted. Historically, this demographic really struggled to put together even 5 sentences about politics without falling back on highly emotive identity-based topics. The ones: country, race, and religion. There was absolutely zero deep dive into fiscal policy, no real discussion about economic sustainability. The entire framework for supporting a leader was rooted in emotion and identity, leaving a massive void where critical, policy-based analysis should have been.
So, what does this all mean? It brings us to a critical junction in our explainer today. If this grassroots voter base was so deeply entrenched in emotion, loyalty, and identity politics, what exactly caused this massive, overnight shift away from blind faith and towards sharp economic awareness? What was the real catalyst here?
Part 2. The taxpayer awakening, the realization of public funds. The absolute turning point was this profound realization. Government money isn't just some infinite magical resource conjured out of thin air. It's their own hard-earned tax dollars. In the past, when the government handed out fertilizer subsidies, it was just blindly accepted as this benevolent gift. People didn't realize they were actually footing the bill. But today, when the budget proposes a 200 rupee wage hike for state workers, the modern voter really scrutinizes it. And this brilliantly illustrates the shift. They no longer see a gift from above. They see a reallocation of their very own funds. We see this exact same pattern playing out with state-owned enterprises. Previously, when the government took over profitable entities like Sri Lankan Airlines, honestly, no one batted an eye. It certainly wasn't seen as a national economic crime by this demographic. But today, the modern understanding is radically different. When the current government provides bailouts or funnels state money to keep the airline afloat, voters immediately recognize the direct cost to their own wallets. That old illusion of this separate pool of government money has just completely vanished.
And maybe the most striking change of all is how they view corruption now. Like we talked about earlier, there used to be this real tolerance for commissions or kickbacks on road construction projects, just as long as the road actually got built. Seeing the visual development was enough to kind of justify the corruption. Today, that old tolerance has been completely wiped out, replaced by a really strict intolerance. And why is that? It's all because of that taxpayer awakening. They are acutely aware now that project commissions aren't just some abstract political game. It's the direct theft of their personal money. No way around it.
Part 3. The present. Data-driven analysis and calculating the true cost. Let's move to and see how this builds in practice. Because it turns out, literally nothing makes a person learn math faster than realizing their own money is on the line. Step 1. They look at the total government funds allocated for a public project. Step 2, they don't just blindly accept that massive number. They actively divide it by the relevant metric. Maybe it's the number of citizens it serves, the number of vehicles on a road, or the kilometers of highway being built. And step 3, they find the exact cost per unit. They are actually doing the math to figure out if a government project is worth the cost or if the price tag is artificially inflated. It's a real game changer. So the crucial point is captured beautifully right here in this quote from the source analysis. Taking data, dividing it, and trying to understand it is a highly advanced state. I mean, think about it. To go from making political decisions based solely on who won a war to auditing infrastructure budgets using a cost per kilometer metric, that is a massive, unprecedented leap forward in political maturity. It's a total shift from passive cheerleading to active mathematical auditing.
Part 4. Rebuilding through political maturity, a positive outlook. The source arrives at a deeply optimistic conclusion here. Having a data-driven, taxpayer-aware electorate isn't just some interesting sociological quirk. It is the absolute fundamental building block for the nation's recovery. When the grassroots voter starts demanding accountability, measuring cost efficiency, and completely rejecting emotional manipulation in favor of hard data, well, the entire standard of governance is literally forced to elevate.
Which leaves us with a totally fascinating question to ponder. We've seen how the Bayya demographic has evolved, going from prioritizing personality and identity all the way to demanding unit cost breakdowns of taxpayer funds. So how is this new analytical maturity going to shape the next election cycle? When emotional rhetoric just doesn't work anymore, how are political campaigns going to adapt to a voting base that is armed with calculators and an acute awareness of their own tax rupees? It is a transformation that will absolutely redefine the future of the nation. Thanks for joining me for this analysis, and keep questioning the data.